Side 3, The Big Game, by Sandy Schofield, continuing on page 115. "You can't do that," Rom said. "They don't always know what's going on." Quark froze. "They're supposed to know what's going on. Is something else wrong? Hands don't change that fast. A player can handle a flicker or two." "That's right." Rom got up, still holding his ear. "That's right. I was wrong." Quark grabbed his brother's elbow and pulled him closer. Rom clapped his other hand on his remaining earlobe. "You're not telling me something," Quark said. "It's nothing important," Rom said. He was whining again, that self-pitying human sound. Quark hated it. "It might be important to me," Quark said. "I don't think so," Rom said. "I do." Quark grabbed the tip of Rom's ear. Rom squealed. "It's nothing. It's really nothing," Rom said as he tried to wrench his ear from Quark's grasp. "It's just that the link between the players and our people watching the monitors sometimes cuts out, too." Quark let go of Rom's ear, too stunned to cause any more damage. First the Nagus, then the murder, and now this. Are the two problems related? Rom massaged his ear with his thumb and forefinger. "I don't know," he said. "The systems are completely different, and one quits while the other keeps working. It makes no sense to me." "Well, it does to me," Quark said. "Someone is sabotaging me." "Who would do that?" Rom asked. "I don't know." Quark kept his voice down. "But I will find out." "You had better find out quickly," Rom said. That brought Quark's attention back. "No, you had better fix the system quickly." Rom nodded, cringing so that his shoulders protected part of his ears. The lights flickered. Both Ferengi looked up. "Maybe," Rom said, "no one is sabotaging you. Maybe that is your problem." "Maybe," Quark said. The lights flickered again, and there was a rumble as the entire station shook. "But it doesn't matter what's causing the problem. The fact is that I am going to lose a lot of money if we don't solve this right now." Rom scuttled around the bar. "I'm sure the players will do fine on their own." "Ha! Those two couldn't play their way out of a child's game." Quark banged his fist on the counter. "I'm stuck paying their entry fees, the Nagus, and Odo. 400 bars of gold-pressed latinum that I could lose if I'm not careful. And I'm not careful. I have you working on my equipment." "Maybe you should see if you can figure out what is wrong with it," Rom said. "And maybe you should find the Grand Nagus and order him back into the room. Idiot! I can't leave this. Go! See what you can do. Make sure the equipment works at least part of the time." Rom hurried away from the bar as if he expected Quark to box his ears again. Quark folded his arms and leaned forward on the bar's smooth surface. Sabotage. It had to be sabotage. He had never had luck this bad before. The murder, the Nagus, Odo, and now this. All the lovely profits disappearing as if they never had been. Odo came around the side of the bar. Quark jumped. "I told that Dabo girl not to let anyone out of the room." "She couldn't very well order me around, now could she?" Odo asked. "I suppose not," Quark said. Odo stared at Quark for a moment as if he were trying to assess the situation. "The players would like the game to start. They're getting quite restless." "I'm waiting for the Nagus," Quark said. "Ah," Odo said. "The joys of politics." "Yeah," Quark said. "Joy. I forgot what that feels like." "Is something wrong?" Odo asked. "You don't look like you're having any fun." Quark slowly stood, feeling old and very tired. "Fun? Making money is fun. I wouldn't call this fun." Chapter 16. The night had been one of the longest and most frustrating in O'Brien's career. Usually he had someone else to lean on. Geordie LaForge on the Enterprise, for instance. Someone else to take the constant questions, the constant demands, the constant pressure. What O'Brien wouldn't do to have Geordi here right now. Geordi would figure out what was causing all these problems. Geordi would have figured it out hours ago. But of course, O'Brien was not Geordi, and Geordi had never had to deal with Cardassian technology. Sometimes O'Brien was surprised the Cardassians had ever invented the wheel, let alone their so-called advanced technology. Right now, he would give anything for a top-of-the-line Federation-made warp core instead of the Cardassian power core. Its power configuration had fluctuated all night. He was afraid that if things continued, the core would be breached, or it would cease functioning altogether. O'Brien wiped his sweaty hands on the side of his uniform. An hour ago, he had had the environmental controls working in ops. The turbo lift was functional, too. Then he had gone back to his quarters for a meal and a much-needed shower. When he got out, dripping wet, the lights quit for nearly a minute, and the door from the bathroom to the bedroom stuck, half open, fortunately. He slid through, got dressed, and came back to ops to find the turbo lift acting up and the replicator out. Now it felt as if the environmental controls were down again. None of this counted the 3 hours he had spent shoring up the power core. He had just built power levels back up to 95% when another wave struck. While the station rattled, O'Brien fought to keep the core's integrity. When the rattling ended, all the work he had done on the core had disappeared. It had lost 15% of its full power capability. Losing power core capability wasn't bad. It was the fluctuations. During the worst of the wave, power levels went to 120% of normal. Much higher, and the core would blow. O'Brien had his best staff near the core so that he could contact them in any emergency. He was doing what he could from ops. It wasn't enough. Maybe this was a recurring loop nightmare. Maybe if he tried hard enough, he would wake up and everything would be fine. Maybe if he wished hard enough, he would be back on the Enterprise and all this would become someone else's problem. O'Brien slid under the engineering controls unit and opened a panel revealing the schematics inside. That last little bouncy rumble had knocked his entire console offline. He found the problem. Simple, really, and fixed it, then got on his feet again. "Chief," Kira said, "I'm getting reports that all the turbo lifts in the habitat ring are out." "Let them use the stairs," O'Brien snapped. "Not funny, Chief. At least one has passengers." He punched the information onto his now functioning engineering center. "I'll send someone there right away." Never mind that it took staff away from other emergencies. People stuck in turbo lifts sometimes made the situation worse by trying to get themselves out. "We're getting hot up here," Sisko said as he walked behind O'Brien. "I know that, sir." "We shouldn't be. This operations center already feels like the middle of a Platanion summer cycle." "Yes, sir," O'Brien said. He ignored the implied command while concentrating on the turbo lifts. Ops would have to wait to be comfortable. "Another disturbance," Dax said as the lights went out in ops. The station rumbled as badly as it had the first time. O'Brien had to hold the console to keep from slipping. This bouncing around was not natural. Space stations did not experience turbulence. The lights on his console remained on despite the darkness around them. How he had managed that, he would never know. He could see Dax's calm, youthful face in the glow of the science console. Kira and Sisko were illuminated by the operations table. All of them took advantage of the weird lighting to see what they could discover. O'Brien abandoned the turbolift problem to monitor the power core. A power surge ran through it. A red light warned that extreme power levels could cause containment breach. O'Brien hid his comm badge. "Teppo," he said to his best assistant, "bring power levels down in the core." "I'm doing the best I can, sir." Teppo's voice sounded faint over the roar of equipment. "Each bounce makes the situation worse." O'Brien shut down all non-necessary systems. The bouncing continued. He clung to the engineering board and ran a diagnostic outside the station. Still nothing. No visible cause. "Teppo," he said, "those levels are too high." Maybe he should have stayed near the core. Maybe he could have brought the levels down quicker. But then he wouldn't be here to handle all the other emergencies. "I know, sir." The rest of Teppo's response got lost in the equipment noise. The rumbling stopped, and the overhead lights returned. Behind him, O'Brien could hear the crack and hissing of loose cables. The charred scent of fried equipment made his heart sink. But the heat was off. Cool air was blowing through the vents. The warning light disappeared. The power core was now operating at 75% of normal. His comm badge chirruped, and Teppo started speaking without waiting for O'Brien. "The surge just went away, sir," Teppo said. "We've lost 25% power." "See what you can discover there," O'Brien said. "And before the next wave hits, let's reroute control of the core to ops. We'll work as a unit if we have to, Ensign." "Yes, sir." Sisko was frowning at O'Brien. "How serious is it, Chief?" "It's worse during those damned waves," O'Brien said. "I'd stay near the core if I knew where we were going to get hit." "Rerouting sounds like a fine solution. That way you can work on keeping ops operational." O'Brien nodded. He wished he didn't have to do any of it. If only they could figure out where the turbulence was coming from. Apparently, Sisko had the same thought. "Any pattern yet?" he asked Dax. "I'm sorry, Benjamin," Dax said. "We're doing something wrong." Sisko pushed himself away from the operations table. His normally immaculate uniform was rumpled, and stubble covered his cheeks. He was the only member of the ops crew who had not taken time to freshen up. "We're missing something." "Yeah," O'Brien said, "like half the power on the station." No one responded to his comment. He didn't expect anyone to. He put the working secondary systems back online. "Maybe we're too close," Dax said. "What does that mean?" Kira's tone was not friendly. But then Kira's tone hadn't been friendly since the middle of the night. It seemed to O'Brien that if she could have taken a Bajoran fighting stick to all the equipment on the station, she would have done so hours ago, and he would have happily helped her. Damned Cardassians! Why couldn't they have designed something that would stand up to strange circumstances? Federation equipment did. Most of the time. "What I mean," Dax said, speaking in her measured way, "is that we are in the middle of this event. We know the disturbance is widespread because we know that both the Bajorans and the Cardassians have felt it. We watched the Ferengi ship disintegrate. And if this is a natural phenomenon that will pass like an ion storm, then the length of time we've been suffering under this is an indication that this thing is huge, depending, of course, on the speed it is traveling." "What's your point, Dax?" Sisko asked. "My point is that if we could get a runabout out of this mess and far enough away to observe, we might see the whole picture. Right now, I suspect we are only getting part of the information we need." O'Brien looked up from his engineering console. Sisko's eyes were closed, the heel of his hand pressed against his forehead. "If we send out a runabout, it runs the risk of getting destroyed, like the Ferengi ship." "Sending a runabout was not my suggestion, Benjamin," Dax said. "I don't think that's our answer at all. But we may need an outside perspective like that to understand this phenomenon. Perhaps if we contact Starfleet." "I've been trying," Kira said. "Our communications systems are so intermittent I don't even know which ones are functioning. I might have got through. I might not have." A blast of ice-cold air hit O'Brien in the middle of the back, sending shudders through him. He too had gotten no information during the disturbance. He went back to wondering about the turbo lifts. 3 had started working again. "Chief," Sisko said, "we're going to need help with communications." "For the moment," O'Brien said without acknowledging Kira, "short-range communications are working just fine. Sending long-range subspace messages could be a problem, but I think that has more to do with the disturbance than with any problem in our systems." "I have no evidence that communications are working," Kira said. "Move to a different operating station," O'Brien said. "I'll fix yours as soon as I can." Kira moved. "You're right. We have short range. And a problem." "Major," Sisko said. "A Cardassian Gaylor-class warship is beneath us," Dax said. "And we're being hailed by a Bajoran ship," Kira said. "I have it too," Dax said. "They have one of the Federation runabouts." "Answer the Bajoran ship's hail, Major," Sisko said. "Already done, sir," Kira said. The turbo lifts were working again. O'Brien kept an eye on the goings-on around him, in case he would have to turn his attention away from inter-station problems, but he began working on the environmental controls. He was now freezing. "Hail the Cardassian ship, Major," Sisko said. Chief, I need to communicate with both ships at the same time. They need to talk to each other. Can you do that? Can't teach pigs to fly, O'Brien muttered. Chief? I can try, sir, O'Brien said. Commander, Kira said, Bajorans and Cardassians. I know how your people feel about the Cardassians, Major, Sisko said. I don't need to be reminded of it. O'Brien wished the communications station was working. He jury-rigged a power boost to the short-range communications system, then opened both hailing frequencies. I have it for you, Commander, he said, but I won't guarantee the work for very long. Put them both on screen, Major, Sisko said. But by the time the words were out of his mouth, the screen had split into two distinctly different pictures. O'Brien recognized the Cardassian captain, Gul Dunar. The Bajoran was Captain Litna of Planetary Defense. In her uniform and with the ship's equipment as her backdrop, she looked even fiercer than she had hours before. What is the meaning of this? Litna snapped. Are you trying to provoke a situation, Commander? The Cardassian asked. You are both in danger, Sisko said. The last ship in this area was torn apart by the phenomenon you're both complaining about. I strongly suggest you both return home until this problem gets solved. Problem, Commander? If the Bajorans keep their terrorists away from our fleet. You're the one attacking our planet, Gul Dunar, Litna said. No one is attacking anyone else, Sisko said. We are in the midst of a strange subspace phenomenon. Go home. Get your scientists busy. We need to solve this, or it will destroy all of us. Stop protecting the Bajorans, Commander, Gul Dunar shouted. This is the last time they will terrorize us. We are here to defend ourselves. If one of our ships is attacked, we will begin a counterattack on Bajor. That is a declaration of war, Litna said. That is a declaration of intent, Gul Dunar said. You have already started the war. No one has started any war, Sisko said. Both of you, send your ships home. We have another problem in this area of space. I would believe you, Commander, Gul Dunar said, if you could be more specific. If I could be more specific, Sisko said, I would be. And the problem at that point might be solved. But I cannot. And I don't need the two of you squabbling like children on top of everything else. They have attacked our ships, Gul Dunar said. They have ravished us for the last time, Litna responded. Another attack and we will defend ourselves. Gul Dunar's likeness disappeared from the screen. We only have a few ships, Commander, Litna said. It would not be a contest. We rely on you for our protection. Bajor is not pleased with what has happened in the last 24 hours. If the situation does not change, we will not be responsible for the consequences. Her image winked out. Major, Sisko said, bring them back. I don't know if talking is such a good idea right now, Kira said. It's the only choice we have. The power boost surged in a ray of bright, pretty colors on O'Brien's console. With a beep that wheezed out, the communications array disappeared. Sorry, O'Brien said. Communications are out again. So much for that choice, Sisko muttered. Dax, keep searching for the cause of this turmoil. We may have a full-scale war on our hands here if we don't solve this. Dax nodded. Sisko turned to Kira and O'Brien. Make getting in touch with Starfleet a priority. We are going to need help with this. He glanced around Ops. Are the turbo lifts working? For the moment, sir, O'Brien said. Good. I'm going to take a much-needed shower. I'll be in my quarters for the next half hour should something else happen. Sisko walked to the turbo lift. As he started his descent, the lights flickered. Chief, Dax said calmly, my console has gone black. O'Brien sighed. It looked as if nothing would ever be easy again. Chapter 17. Auntie, for heaven's sake! Cynthia Jones leaned back in her chair and, with her free left hand, reached behind her and caressed Dr. Bashir's neck. The good doctor jumped. Garak grimaced. The Jones woman couldn't keep her hands off the doctor, although it was quite clear he wasn't interested. Garak didn't understand why the good doctor didn't tell her to leave him alone. But then Bashir didn't do well in social situations. Garak remembered that from the time he had asked Bashir for help. It had taken several overt instructions before the doctor understood what Garak was getting at. Nom, the Ferengi player that Cynthia Jones had been speaking to, finally threw in his ante. Really, Kinsack the Romulan said, you don't have to consider an ante unless you want to quit the game.
Nice.
Nom pressed his left ear as if it hurt him. I wasn't considering, he said in his sycophantic Ferengi way. I was slow. He was up to something, and everyone at the table knew it. Kinsack and his friend Darak, who seemed remarkably calm about the murder of another Romulan, watched Nom like an Indian tiger watched the Sweetwater gazelle it ate for dinner. Harding chomped on his Ferengi cigar, leaving yellow tobacco stains on his mouth, his gaze always assessing Nom. Clar, the other human at the table, had actually peeked at Nom's cards twice, and not very discreetly. Only the Irits appeared unperturbed, but no one could read its blank obsidian face. Garak envied it, the perfect poker face. Slow, Clar said. Of course. What would one expect from a Ferengi? One would expect the Ferengi to play according to its own rules, the Irit said. Its metallic voice grated on Garak. It sounded like the creature relied on some sort of technical device to speak the language, but try as he might, Garak couldn't see anything. The dealer shuffled.
What have we got?
She was a slight human woman with dark brown hair and nimble fingers. None of the dealers were Ferengi, a shrewd move on Quark's part. No one would have trusted Ferengi dealers. Garak watched this human woman closely. He wasn't sure he could trust her either. Still, the first 2 hours of play had gone well for him. He had more chips in front of him than he had when he started. A good thing, considering he had spent most of the time trying to figure out the other players' styles. That made the discomfort of the gaming room worth it. During the first hour of play, he was wondering if he would survive, not because of his hands or the other players' skill, but because the extreme heat made the temperature and the smell untenable. Even though the Meapod was 3 tables away, the stifling heat made her stench intensify. Garak expected everyone to become a bit ripe by the end of play, but to start out that way was a bad omen. Then the cooling controls had kicked in. If the cold air blasts continued, the room would be an icebox by evening. At least that would control the smell. The dealer dealt 2 cards to each player.
Okay.
Nom leaned to the left. Clar frowned at him. Cynthia Jones turned her attention from Dr. Bashir and concentrated on her hand. Garak glanced at his cards. A pair of deuces. Nice start. Harding began the betting with 5 bars of gold-pressed platinum. Garak, Cynthia, the Irits, and Clar called. Both Romulans folded.
Raise.
Nom stared at his cards, then at the pile of chips in the center of the table.
Sure.
It's not a decision, Cynthia Jones said after a moment. Either you call, you raise, or you fold. Nom's hands shook as he tossed in 5 red chips. He leaned to the right, crowding Garak, forcing him to hold his cards close to his chest.
Here's the flop.
The dealer dealt the flop. Another deuce, a 4 of hearts, and a 5 of spades. Suddenly, Nom sat up. He pressed his hand against his left ear again and smiled. The dealer shot him a nervous glance. No one smiled in the middle of a poker hand. Nom didn't wait for Harding to start the round of betting. Nom threw in 6 red chips, and for the first time, his hands weren't shaking. Garak had played with Ferengi before. They were erratic card players and often frivolous in their betting, hoping for huge profits with little effort. But Nom was very hard to read. Clar ran a hand across his silver hair, his eyes almost flat. No one else tossed in chips. Nom glanced around the table. Well, he said, his tone triumphant, you either call, raise, or fold, like the lady said. He reached for more chips to toss in. Then, so quickly that Garak didn't see the movement, Clar grabbed Nom's wrist. Don't be overzealous, Ferengi. Clar's voice had a flatness that matched his eyes. A chill ran down Garak's back. For a moment, none of the players moved. Nom seemed to have shrunk into his chair. Garak frowned. Clar's comment bothered him.
No way.
Perhaps because it implied a knowledge of Nom's hand and Nom's motives. Or perhaps it was the icy tone which Klar had used, that executioner's warning tone that implied that any mistake could cost the Ferengi his life. Then the Irits grabbed 6 red chips and tossed them in.
I'm out.
Are you all
Jeez,
folding?
guys.
It asked. I am, Cynthia Jones said. Harding tossed in his chips. Klar stared at Nom for a long moment, then said, Nothing could make me fold from this round. Garak folded despite his 3 deuces. The hand was not spectacular, and he felt as if he didn't want to get involved in the battle between Nom and Klar. The dealer dealt the 4th card. Everyone stared at Nom. He watched Klar. Klar's flat expression hadn't changed. Finally, Nom folded, his hands shaking as he did so. A slight buzzing filled the air.
I'll sit this out.
Nom leaned over, pressing his left hand to his ear.
And I fold.
Are you all right? Garak asked. Earache,
Out.
Nom managed. Excuse me. He stuck one finger in his ear. Cynthia Jones rolled her eyes. Disgusting, Garak said. Remind me never to play poker with a Ferengi again. Harding, Klar, and the Irits finished the hand while the others watched Nom. Garak barely registered the fact that Klar took the pot. For goodness sake, Nom, take your finger out of your ear. We're here to play poker, not watch you pick at yourself, Cynthia Jones said. The Tribble cooed, as if concurring with her words. Are we ready for the next hand? The dealer asked. She shuffled the deck.
Not a chance.
Please, the Irit said, let us do something besides watch this
Raise you.
irritating display. Listen to you gag out a sentence, Klar said. Garak frowned at the others. I don't think it would hurt us to be polite to each other. Kinsack shook his head. What kind of Cardassian are you, anyway? Polite, huh?
It was a stump.
The dealer finished shuffling.
The flop.
She set the deck in front of Cynthia Jones, who cut exactly in the middle. Then the dealer dealt the 2 hole cards to each player. I am a simple clothier, Garak said, as he picked up his cards. He had an 8 of spades and a jack of hearts. Who stays on a Federation space station, Harding said around his cigar.
That's everything.
He tossed in 2 red chips.
Not today.
Hey, Klar, are spies always polite? Klar put 2 red chips in the pot. It's easier not to get noticed if you're polite. Unless you're Cardassian, Kinsack said as he checked. Or Klingon, Garak said with distaste. He checked as well. So did the Irits and Cynthia Jones. Nom raised the stakes by tossing in a 3rd red chip, and the other players did the same. They all wanted to see the flop.
I'm up.
With a slight flourish, the dealer turned over the next 3 cards. Each card snapped as it hit the table. The 3 of hearts, the 9 of hearts, and the 10 of clubs. Garak pulled his cards closer to his chest. With the 8 and the jack, he needed only 1 more card for a straight. But the 2 hearts gave another player an equally good shot at a flush. He was doing well enough. He would see how the other players bet. Cynthia Jones folded. Nom checked, Klar raised, and the remaining players called. Nom seemed to have lost his fear as he tossed in the requisite chips. Suddenly, the attention was off Garak and onto the cards themselves. Garak was getting cold, and it wasn't just the room temperature. Nom was not acting as he had before. Sometime in the last 2 hands, he had gained an uncharacteristic confidence. Ferengi were difficult players in the best of times, but Ferengi players in a Ferengi-hosted game were always suspect, especially if they changed their behavior. Still, the explanation could be a simple one. Perhaps Nom's cards had improved, or perhaps he had finally forgotten how much money sat before him and had gotten lost in the game. Garak would bide his time and see what happened in subsequent hands. With a smoothness that came from years of practice, the dealer turned over the next card, the Queen of Hearts. Garak felt a slight rush of excitement. He had his straight, but 3 hearts were showing. Anyone with 2 hearts in hand would have a flush. The straight might not be enough to beat it. When the bet came around, he pushed it by 2 red chips. A cautious bet, but one that signaled the other players that he would stay for the showdown. Then Nom shoved half of his remaining chips into the pot. A small fortune in gold-pressed latinum. The chill that had been building in Garak finally overwhelmed him. Either the Ferengi played full-tilt poker, betting everything when he had a spectacular hand and whining when he didn't, or he had information he shouldn't. But there was nothing Garak could do. He leaned back in his chair to take a moment to decide if he was going to call the bet or fold. He didn't have to decide. "You cheated," Klar said, his voice soft and low and very mean. "Ferengi do not cheat," Nam said. Garak placed his cards together, hid them in his hand, and rested his hand on the table. Then he scooted away from the two arguing players. "Well, you do," Klar said. His gaze had that flatness again, the flatness that Garak had seen on only one other face, in the eyes of a Cardassian about to murder a prisoner. "I have never cheated in my life," Nam said. "And you lie as well," Klar said. Quark almost materialized beside the table. "Do we have a problem here?" "You allow cheats in this game," Klar said. "I don't cheat," Nam said, looking up at Quark. "You know that. I am a good, honest player who simply bet too much for this human's tastes." "He is cheating us," Klar said. Quark looked at Klar. Garak recognized the assessing gaze. Quark had used it before to figure out how to deal with unsatisfied customers in the bar. "What proof do you have of this accusation?" Quark asked. But his tone was not belligerent, a relief as far as Garak was concerned. "He switched cards. You might want to search him." Garak set his cards down. He pushed his chair back farther. He did not want to be close to this fight. "I did not switch cards. No one would be so stupid as to do that in your tournament, Quark. I would never cheat like that," Nam said. Quark snatched Nam's cards from his hands and studied them without letting anyone else see. Then he glanced at the cards face up on the table. He set Nam's cards face down and patted Nam, making Nam turn his sleeves inside out. Quark shrugged and looked at Klar. "I see no evidence of cheating," Quark said. Klar's expression did not change, but the room got colder. "Did you see any cheating?" Quark asked the dealer. She glanced at Klar before answering. Klar studied her like a Slovian water beast studied its prey. The dealer seemed unaffected. She shook her head no.
Interesting.
Quark bobbed at Klar, the Ferengi conciliatory gesture. "Sorry," Quark said, "but the hand must stand. If there are further problems, contact me. Finish play." He disappeared as quickly as he had appeared. Garak pushed his chair back to the table. Klar looked at the overlarge pot, then at Nam. Klar folded. "You will get yours, Ferengi." Nam cackled and tapped his bet, bouncing in his chair like an excited child. The Romulans folded, the Irits folded, and so did Garak. Nam pulled the pot toward him, his broad little face shining with greed. He had doubled his winnings with one hand. Garak watched him. Nam had bought the pot, but it felt as if he had bought something else, too. Despite the stack of chips in front of Nam, Garak did not envy him. Not at all. Chapter 18. Kira's hands were shaking. Her body was humming. She felt as if she had to keep moving or she would wilt with exhaustion. Yet at the same time she was braced for another problem. Any problem. She focused on the communications console, making sure that O'Brien's repairs had everything online. She still couldn't tell if long-range communications were working, but she sent an encoded message to Starfleet, explaining the situation and putting in a request for help. Then she paused. Commander Sisko was gone from the bridge. O'Brien was swearing over the engineering console. Dax's fingers danced on the science console's pad as she ran diagnostic after diagnostic. Carter pushed hair out of her face as she frowned at the operations table. The commander had told Kira to contact Litna, but Kira had put it off. Captain Litna had commanded a wing of Bajoran freedom fighters for years, conducting successful raids on the Cardassian strongholds. When Kira was a child, she had met Litna near the fountains and had been in awe of her ever since. Commander Sisko's handling of Litna made Kira want to crawl under the communications board. Sometimes the man didn't understand the fine points of Bajoran diplomacy. Kira took a deep breath and hailed Litna's ship. At first, no one responded. Kira bit her lower lip. Had something happened? Had the Cardassians hurt Litna? Was Litna correct? Was this all a plot? At the second hail, Litna appeared on the main viewing screen. All activity in ops stopped. Dax looked at Kira with a measuring gaze. Kira felt her cheeks get hot. She left the communications board and walked to Sisko's usual position in front of the operations table. "You hailed me, Major." Litna's tone had a trace of sarcasm, emphasis on the word Major. Kira swallowed. "Yes, Captain. Commander Sisko wanted me to clarify a few things." "Smart man," Litna said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Did he want you to speak woman to woman or Bajoran to Bajoran?" Kira let out the breath she had been holding. "Captain, I asked to talk to you, since you didn't listen to him. You persist in believing that the Cardassians are attacking Bajor. They're not." "Really, Major? Then what have we been experiencing?" "Look," Kira said, clasping her hands behind her back. She had never encountered anyone so stubborn. "There is some subspace activity going on that is affecting us, you, the Cardassians, and anything else in the area. A Ferengi ship broke up yesterday afternoon under the strength of this, and you do not know what this phenomenon is." Litna crossed her arms in front of her chest. "Could it, in fact, be a Cardassian ploy? You think they would destroy their own fleet?" "My equipment does not show a destroyed fleet. A few ships are having problems, perhaps, but that's common." Litna leaned closer to the screen. "Tell me, Major, what is wrong with the Gaylor-class warship I see in Bajoran space?" "Nothing, but you're wrong, Major." Again, Litna had a cold smile. "What is wrong is that the Cardassian warship is in Bajoran space, and the Federation, who have vowed to protect us, are doing nothing. What's worse, Major Kira Nerys, liaison between the Bajoran government and the Federation, is making apologies for both the Federation and the Cardassian ship. Unless you have forgotten, Major, you represent Bajor." Kira felt as if Litna had knocked the wind out of her. "I haven't forgotten, Captain. I just..." "Good," Litna said. "Then solve this, for Bajor." The screen went blank. Kira took a deep breath. Everyone in ops was looking at her. "For what it's worth, Major," O'Brien said, "she didn't try to understand." Kira gripped the operations table. A few words from Captain Litna and she felt 10 years old again. Kira wasn't betraying Bajor. Captain Litna wasn't listening. "Maybe I should contact her again." Kira looked down at the table. A handful of lights still indicated problems. "Try to reason with her." "You won't be able to convince her, Major," O'Brien said. "Trust me." "I think," Dax said, "we're better off solving whatever it is that is causing this. Then no one will believe they're under attack." Kira nodded. They were right. All that was important at the moment was stopping the attacks, if they were attacks. Later she would defend herself, and Litna would be very sorry she had ever doubted her.